Lieutenant General Tuku Buratai, you are not a stranger to this place. I say, Lieutenant General Tuku Buratai, you are not a stranger to the National Assembly. You have appeared before us several times. You just retired, and you were the chief of army, chief of army staff. And the epic center of this crisis in this country, this current one that is snowballing to so many places, the epic center is Borno State. And that is where you are from. Lieutenant General Tuku Buratai, what is the problem? What is it that cannot be solved? You were chief of army staff for 66 months. What is the problem? What do you think is the solution? That's one. Number two, from what we got through the social media, the media, conventional media, that you resigned. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to clear the air. Said you resigned. That was the feelers we got. Did you resign or you were retired?
Mr. Chairman, for giving me this opportunity once again, and from your introductory questions and the follow-up questions have been quite interesting and quite in order, and very useful, of course. Starting with that of Senator Ndume, the issue of military diplomacy, what are the gaps, how do we improve on the successes so far achieved, and what our successors will carry on with. I want to say that it's very interesting that I am one of those that worked out the concept of operation of the Multinational Joint Task Force. And it started as a decision, by the head of states and governments of the Lake Chad Basin Commission members. It was in office from early 2013 up to 2014, but I joined them later, early in 2015, and we started and continued with the diplomatic aspect from the chief of defense staff level to the ministerial level and up to the head of states and governments level. Before May 2015, the efforts were still being worked out despite negotiations or discussions for over a year plus, almost 2 years. But it was with the coming of the present administration of President Muhammadu Buhari that the tempo was raised and activities picked up. The federal government had initially pledged $100 million for the takeoff of the Multinational Joint Task Force. Up to the time Mr. President, President Muhammadu Buhari was elected and inaugurated, that funds was not released. So he was the one that first kick-started the diplomatic aspect in terms of real action by funding. And that was how the MNJTF started. And as the commander, we swung into action between July, August to September. No, that was between April, May up to June, and then early July of 2015. And that was a good diplomatic move that brought about this. And right now, as I'm talking, the multinational Joint Task Force countries, we have the Cameroonians operating along our border lines up to Sambisa with Cameroon. Our troops are also collaborating with the Chadian as well as the Nigerian troops. We also have the commander, who is a Nigerian, and they've always been Nigerian commanders, I mean Nigerians who command the MNJTF. Now, as far as diplomatic aspect within the sub-region, especially the Lake Chad Basin Commission, it has made tremendous success. But the frustration is that of an asymmetric warfare. It is a complex operation. It has permeated the societies, both in Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger, and Chad. It is something that started more than 30, 40 years ago. They have penetrated the communities. They have won the communities to their side. That's why you see small hamlet, 1 or 2 people, still you see them hibernating or keeping Boko Haram in those locations. So it's a complex. So it requires a whole of government approach to deal with this. Military activities or military action is just one aspect. And this is one mistake we have been making, that only the military that is seen to solve this thing. It's not. Military cannot solve this action. In the first place, it wasn't the military that started it. There were political, social, economic factors that need to be addressed from the beginning. I don't need to take it back from independence or from the First Republic and so on. Development should be progressive. There should be roads everywhere. There should be employment. There should be hospitals, schools, all over. But I tell you now, yesterday I was counting 5 local governments in Borno State cannot have do not have good access roads to those locations. I'm not indicting anybody. That's the truth. You can't have access since independence up to now. Where do you get the solution? The same thing in the northwest, Niger State, Zamfara. Niger is north central, where we have this incident now of kidnapping. The same thing in Zamfara, in Katsina and Sokoto. There are so many ungovernable spaces. Until those things are penetrated, those locations are penetrated with road infrastructure, with rail, with amenities in terms of hospitals, schools, and so on, then we carry everybody along. And education is very fundamental, And unless these things are done, we will make, despite the diplomatic efforts, internally we must get it right. And that is the essence of this diplomacy, foreign policy. It's a projection of domestic policy. So if you are able to domicile or curtail these things internally, that's why you project to other countries, and all our neighboring countries will be able to have a very robust defense as well as foreign policy action that will lead to the eradication of all this insecurity in the region. The next issue, sorry I'm taking long because I'm quite passionate about it, and these are the realities, and the truth must be told, because this thing cannot end. I predicted sometimes that it may take another 20 years, and that is the truth, His Excellency Senator Bikula Amosun did mention the issue. Still, I think it's related. The insecurity still pervades the nation, and it's still shocking to continue to see things are still getting out of hand, probably. Why, despite all the efforts, finances, equipment, and the rest from all areas. One of my responses is to what I just said, but as far as since 2015, I met an army that is demoralized, an army that had no equipment, even simple troop-carrying vehicle. In Maiduguri, they were using civilian joint task force vehicle to move troops for operation. They were using trailers that carries horses, donkeys, cows, to move troops from one location to the other for operation. But today we have invented our own indigenous vehicles, the Ezigo MRAP, the Konkaro MRAPs, to change the narrative. And if you see, the trend has been that most of those areas that hitherto have been occupied by the Boko Haram terrorists have been taken over by our troops. But how do you sustain it? You need more training, you need more manpower, you need more equipment because of the vastness of the terrain. you require a lot of resources. That is on the military side. But more is required on the political and the governance side as well. So unless these things are done comprehensively, deliberately, with serious intervention, we will still continue, this insecurity can continue to lead us. If you look at this insurgency, as I said, is new to us here. But even those that have been experiencing it, especially Afghanistan, Iraq, and some of this, especially Syria and so on, the Middle East generally, and even in some Far East Asian countries, you still have this. But it depends upon the government efforts. Everybody, all stakeholders must be responsible to contain it to the barest minimum. Unless that one is done, it will be very difficult, to contain it completely. But I hope it's not lost. I'm sure with the steps being taken by the government and the collaboration of everybody, all the stakeholders, the National Assembly, of course, has a very good role to play by appropriation, by oversight function, by ensuring the right things are done. We will get it over. I think that is the key, the key solution, as asked. Senator James Manager, yes, I have been to the National Assembly several times since 2015. In fact, even as Colonel, I've been here. I once represented the Chief of Army Staff as a Colonel, in the National Assembly. So as far back as 20 years, I've been in this place. So I've interacted, and I appreciate the level of contributions, the level of probing, the level of oversight function of this distinguished Senate. They are men of integrity, men of knowledge and experience. We really have tapped from your knowledge and your experiences in our activities. And this really has prepared me to work as the Chief of Army Staff and related very well with the National Assembly. My state, I have just mentioned it also, is related. The epicenter, that is where this indoctrination has penetrated so deep, as far back as 60s and early 70s, even as a schoolboy. They used to despise us, those of us that wear uniform and go to school. I've mentioned it here. They see you, schoolboy, that you no longer pray, you no longer respect your teachers. So all these things are the Boko Haram concept, that have been penetrating, 50 years since or more. So it's not something that you just overnight get it right. But we have succeeded. I think with the trend, with what we have left behind, in terms of equipment, so much equipment are being imported now. In terms of training, we have improved on it. I left the army, it's so terrible. Our intelligence capacity was so low, very low. But today, it's first class intelligence of the army, So that's the truth. Our training, our cyber capability has grown. Started very well, excellently. We have, there is no formation or unit or service that is better than the Nigerian Army Cyber Command today. And so many other welfare, training of officers. The impact of my training on officers can really be felt in the next 5, 6, 7 years, as they mature and come up and take over command of the army. So these are the things that we have done. Despite my long stay, I think it has paid off. 66 months is a very good period for one really to have. I have changed many concepts of operation to conform to the challenges on the ground. We cannot continue to use the same tactics, the same procedures, over and over again, and we're receiving the same results. We have to change. That's why this super camp concept came up. That's why the mobile strike teams came up. And that's why we have the special army super camps. You can see there are successes that we are having in Faskari, in the northwest, in the northeast, and so on. If this is sustained, I assure you the insecurity will be reduced to the barest minimum. and complemented with the government efforts, developmental efforts, we'll be able to get it right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this thought-provoking question, and quite deep, and I'm sure is born out of experience, knowledge, and wisdom. I want to thank you for this question, distinguished chairman. Let me just take it up the way you mentioned it. For example, one of the countries that has a semblance of success, in winning the war on terror is Colombia. I was privileged to travel to Colombia and interacted with the military, with their chief of army staff, and I learned a lot from him. As a student or participant at the National Defense College in Bangladesh, Bangladesh also had terrible experience of this insurgency. They were able to clear it, the Chittagong hill track insurgency. This is an example of these two countries. But at the end, they all ended up in negotiation. It's very key. So the military action leads, to the political solution that can lead to negotiation, and it should be on a stronger point. And this is where I've been focusing as Chief of Army Staff then, to ensure that we have the upper hand. And to this extent, I think we have achieved in that regard. But it requires the other elements that really need to come up and push forward for that solution. So these two examples are very, very key. In Latin America as well as in Asia, Bangladesh in particular, Colombia and Bangladesh in particular. Well, role of other sectors, now that I'm a diplomat designate, I think it's quite interesting to note that foreign policy is a projection of a nation's interest, national interest. And one of our national interests is security, and it's key, to the stability of our country, and is key to the stability of our regional arrangement and at the global level. So I think my experience as a wartime commander, the counterinsurgency in Boko Haram, as a chief of army staff and an experienced commander in the Multinational Joint Task Force, I think I will bring to bear my wealth of experience, in ensuring that what has been identified as the internal factors that has led to this intractable insecurity are properly articulated, properly harnessed, and projected, to those countries, or the country that I will be privileged to represent, Mr. President, and our country in those countries, to ensure that the security does not degenerate, and also the security situation improves, and we continue to make sure that the available resources are harnessed in terms of manpower, in terms of the economy, in terms of the wherewithal, and also the policy direction, to ensure that it is pursued to its logical conclusion. So I think I will be trading on a familiar terrain with my sojourn with the United Nations in Angola, with my short sojourn in the Multinational Joint Task Force, and of course my role in the African Union African Standby Force operationalization workshop and seminar that I have largely contributed. So I want to thank you most sincerely and ensure you that we will have a better deal in terms of diplomatic sojourning, diplomatic with a very high sense of security within for Nigeria and our bilateral or multilateral cooperations globally. Thank you, sir.